Oh, Christine. I don't know what to do because usually you beat me to the intro, but welcome everybody to it. And that's why we drink. How are you today, Christine? I missed you so much.
I miss you too. I'm trying to give you the space to start the episode, you know.
Oh, that's very kind, but I think I secretly like when you take the reins.
But I needed you to make that decision for yourself instead of me, imposing it upon you. So I'm glad we've reached the same decision. And next week I'll start the episode.
Okay. Well, I'm
just teasing.
Oh, Christine, what are you up to today on this fine Tuesday? Tuesday.
I don't even know anymore. I gotta say, I'm drinking a cold brew. Okay, a potent cold brew because. I had one of those nights last night that when you're like watching a sitcom or a rom-com and someone has a baby and they're like, and that is and I've always said, which I know in some ways this might be ignorant or I don't know, but I've always said like I felt like people fearmonger a lot with parenting and like put this like fear in people and say like you're never gonna be yourself again, you're never gonna have friends again, like there's just a lot, and maybe I just internalized that probably.
I have as well. Right? It terrifies me.
It's terrifying, and like then I had a baby and I was like, okay, like you can make this work with like your with your life. Like we live in a time where as a woman I don't have to like stop my whole life for having a baby, But so I've always felt very like, yeah, we're kicking ass and like Blaze does so much. And last night, the molars started coming in and
the teething.
Oh my God. And she's had like her front teeth. She already has 8 teeth, but like the molars started coming in. And
Oof.
Boy, are we in our own personal hell. This poor thing, she's just like pulling on her ears, like fevers, just like wailing, like all night long wailing. And then I like put my finger in and like her gums are just like swollen and like hot, and there's like you can feel the teeth coming through, and I'm like, this sounds so painful. And for a baby who's like never had any sort of like real life experience, it's like she must be like, what is this happening to me?
The worst thing in the world.
Yeah, and she hasn't been eating enough because, so then she wakes up and she's starving in the middle of the night.
Sounds like today's maybe an applesauce kind of day.
Yeah, it is a one of those like Go-Gurt, like the organic Go-Gurt, whatever it's called. And like literally in the middle of the night, Blaze came downstairs at 4:30 and I was sitting on the couch with her watching Miss Rachel, which I just learned about. And
oh, really?
Feeding her.
Rachel.
I do too. And feeding her yogurt out of like a tube. Blaze came down and was like, oh my God, what's going on? And Leona was just like laughing, but she had just like tear-stained face because she was crying all night. And then Blaze took over. And so we've been taking turns. But this morning, I will say, we accomplished something because we went to the gym, like her little gym class, and she did some front tumbles and she did some climbing.
Wow.
And she's napping. So you know what? It's okay. I have coffee. I'm ready to go.
Oh my gosh. And is she better during the day or something? Because she's like, you're willing to like throw her around in circles, but she like her teeth are still breaking through her mouth.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I think during the day she's been very, very cranky, but then today I think she's like on. I don't know. It goes day by day. I feel like some days she gets the fevers and the achiness, and some days she doesn't. But they say it's like a 2-week span. So I'm hoping, and it's been going on for a little while. So I'm hoping we get through it soon.
I'm so sorry. That sounds awful.
It's one of those nights where I'm like, oh, I see now what people are saying when they're like, this is really hard. And don't get me wrong. It is hard. All of it's hard. But like
this part you can't put a positive spin on.
No, this part just sucks because like she's in pain. That's the worst part. It's like, oh God,
And as someone, my molars are my favorite teeth that I have in my head.
Because you can eat steak with them.
I think I don't. Well, I have some sort of probably like oral fixation or something. If Freud were here, where like there's something about like.
You do say that. You've said that. You chew on.
I chew on some weird things because it feels good on my molars, like the Dr. Scholl's insoles. Oh my God, they feel so good. They're so good. It's like when we used to chew on like the pencil grippers, you know?
Yeah, I do get it. I
just never grew out of it. And so as someone who loves my molars, I'm telling you, Leona, wherever you are, it is worth your time when they kick in.
She can eat more fruit snacks once she has those.
She can have some Dr. Scholl's insoles with me.
Don't you dare. Don't you dare.
They're big enough she couldn't choke. She couldn't possibly choke on it.
Don't they have liquid inside them?
I've never broken through with my human teeth with 30 years experience, so I think she wouldn't do it.
You don't put them out of your shoes and then into your mouth, right?
Be for real. Absolutely not.
It's not a thing where I'm supposed to suddenly know all the parameters and rules surrounding this habit you have. Like, I
think we could assume I have feet insoles and mouth insoles, and they are separate at all times.
I'm so sorry. I should have known.
Man, if you need something to do, if you have some sort of like stimming thing, like, and you need a new thing to chew on, you give one of those Dr. Scholl's foot insoles a
okay,
whirl.
I'm not signing off on this in case we get sued, because I am saying at your own risk, chew on something that goes in your shoes and probably has chemicals on it. I don't know.
It probably has chemicals. I mean, I'm saying you go for it, and also don't sue us. I'm just saying it's a good time if you want to give it a whirl once, and that's it.
This turned really interesting. Anyway,
don't die.
This is why I drink today. Blaze and I both woke up and like looked at each other and were like, "Oh my god, our eyes!" I was like, "Your eyes." He's like, "Your eyes." And we're just like, so tired. Anyway.
The first night of waking up and seeing yourself aged parents.
Oh, well, we had that definitely during the newborn phase, but then we got jaded because like she slept so well for so many months that we were like, ha, we nailed it. And then all of a sudden,
I really think you're predisposed to have a worse second child. Like, you know how they say that if the first baby's good, the second baby is like kind of a little bit of a fireball.
Yeah, because they say like the first baby like convinces you to have a second, and then you're like, oh no, what have I done? Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like if Leona was this good, that 2 weeks into her like being alive, you're like, oh, we nailed it. You know, you're really going to go through the ringer if you have a second kid. Anyway.
Help.
The end. No.
Why do you drink?
I don't know why I drink today. It's always more medical stuff. I'm still having these like stupid fainting spells. But
can you tell them about your Dr. Scholl's inserts? They might want to know.
That might be what's doing it.
Just saying.
No, I'm like on a weird I've created this whole routine. I don't even know. Like, this isn't like doctor's orders. This is me just like kind of going with my gut on like adding certain vitamins and like. So SVT has been handled, and so now this is a whole new thing. And so currently they're thinking it's POTS, which a lot of people did write in a long time ago and say that it sounded like POTS. So I've been really like, I've looked like a crazy person. Allison's family is in town, and I just must look like the most unhinged person. But also I've literally next month is going to mark a year of all my medical stuff, and so I'm just officially like, fuck it with how insane I look in public, because I have a backpack full of like all these like a medical bag at all times. If it is POTS, I apparently need to be eating like so much more sodium than I have. So I like have these salt sticks that I'm eating like
oh yeah, we talked about it last week or a week before, because I said it reminds me of a horse.
Yeah, they just taste like vitamin C, but they're I have to be chugging water constantly, so I'm drinking like a gallon of water a day. I'm like eating so much salt. It has helped on days where I've done it. I haven't had fainting spells, but I don't know if it's because of that or if I'm just like lucking out.
Are you keeping a little journal to like mark?
Oh, yeah. Good. And but yeah, so because I'm getting another heart monitor in at the end of January, but it will
Congratulations.
Thank you, but it will be while we're on tour, so nothing's gonna get solved until after tour. So
well, at least you're putting it to the ultimate test, you know.
Yeah, it's true. And so far, I just want to say I have not. I don't want to, knock on whatever wood you have, everybody. But I have not had any fainting spells at nighttime yet, and so that's my big hope. That as long as I don't have fainting spells during the night, I'm okay, because that's when we have shows, and I would really like to not faint in front of everybody on stage. So, I keep telling myself it's just like 16 or 17 shows, and if I can just get through those 16 or 17 nights, we're in the clear, at least until the fall maybe or something. So
yeah,
that's all I need to do is just learn how to control it enough to make those 16 nights really worth it, and we'll figure out the rest from there. But I will leave it on a good reason why I drink this week, because I am always such like a medical bummer these days. But so I'm wearing a shirt that I wear pretty often where it's a little cartoon house. For people on YouTube, I'm showing you, but for people who can't see, it is a little cartoon house, and at the top of it, it says, "In this house, we respect people's pronouns." I always get comments on it, good or bad. I always get an opinion whenever I wear this shirt in public.
That's my least favorite kind of shirt to wear, by the way.
Well, actually, you know who inspired me is Blaze, because he wears shirts like this.
He does, you know, and we do get, actually in Kentucky, we've only gotten good comments, which is, I mean, again, knock on wood, but we've gotten quite a few people out of car windows, and yeah, he has some cool ones.
Well, he inspired me because I was like, if a straight white cisgender man can do it, I can do it.
In Kentucky, by the way.
In Kentucky.
Ballsy.
Maybe I couldn't do it in Kentucky, but I can certainly do it in Los Angeles and not be like a wimp about it. So I was wearing this shirt yesterday to a museum, and all the docents there were at an age where I was assuming, either correctly or wrongly, I was stereotyping the whole, and all of these people were older, where I assumed that they probably would not side with my shirt. And I wrongly assumed about one woman who was she was definitely in her 70s at least. But I guess she read my shirt from far away. And as I came up to her, I guess she'd been waiting.
The police. Oh.
She'd been waiting for me to approach her, I guess, she could be within talking range. And she went, "I really like your shirt." And it says, "In this house, we respect people's pronouns." She says, "I really like your shirt. The only grammar I care about is the Oxford comma." And I went,
"Same,
girl. That's a line that I hope to use for the rest of the time now."
That's a good fucking line.
And she said that she even had an argument with her grandson during Christmas about how pronouns are important.
Fuck yeah.
And how the Oxford comma is just as important. And I went, okay, you keep inserting your little narrative in, and I appreciate it. And so
I love it.
Anyway, that's my feel good reason why I drink this week, because I felt bad that I wrongly assumed something about a person. But you know, I'm used to getting kind of nasty looks from that demographic. Sure. And she really she made my whole day with that. So that's why I drink.
I love that.
What are you drinking? Just water? You're drinking your cold brew.
Cold brew. Don't you forget it.
I'm drinking some of my gallon of water. So
great, good for you. You're healthier than me today.
Well, Christine, I know you've got a little bit of a lengthy story today, and I've got a little bit of a shorty. So we didn't even plan that. That just worked out very nicely for us.
Oh, good. Also, I'm like really loving my voice right now because it keeps like cracking a little bit because I don't know if you heard. I'm sure you didn't, but the Bengals won their first playoff game last week, and I got to go. And so I lost my voice, but now I'm like Phoebe on Friends, where like I find it much more charming when my voice goes up. It like cracks a little bit, and I'm like
the raspy flip is what I call that.
Raspy.
Yeah.
So I just realized I went and it like did that. So just for anyone who's wondering, if you scream for like 4 hours straight, it might happen to you too.
Well, if anyone here is interested in some satisfying raspy ASMR, they will be immediately fast forwarding through my part and going straight to
my long story. By the end, I will just be whispering, so it might be actual ASMR, bad ASMR.
By the end, you'll have emailed me your notes, and it'll have done
read it.
Forced to hear me anyway. So okay, I'll do my quick little story, and I don't even know what to call it. It's more of a mystery. It's kind of got a cryptid vibe to it, but it's more of a mystery. And this is the story of the Van Meter visitor.
What the fuck? This sounds like a criminal. It sounds like a stalker or something.
It is very vague. It's actually vague on purpose. So I will tell you about that in a little bit. But it's called the Van Meter visitor because it's in Van Meter, which is in central not Ohio, Iowa. For some reason, those sound the same in my brain. Yes. Iowa, Ohio, whatever.
I mean, they're close enough.
Van Meter, central Iowa, and it's 19 miles west of Des Moines. So this is in 1903. Fun fact, the population at the time was about 400 people. There was other sources that set up to 900, but the census says 400. So we're going to rock with that. So this is late 1903. This is, or I guess on its way to being late, September 29th. And it's the first story comes around at 1 a.m. And there's a man. He is 35. His name is Ulysses G. Griffith. Which
Ulysses never mind.
Ulysses, are you talking about Grant?
Yeah. I got really thrown off because that's like the only, besides like, you know, the book, that's the only Ulysses.
What book? What book? What
Ulysses.
Is there a book called Ulysses?
Okay, I was like, am I like having a yes, there is. Yes.
Sorry, you're talking I don't know if you know this, but I'm not like the biggest reader.
I'm sorry. I thought you were like I don't know.
I thought you meant the Bible. You said the book. And I was like, Ulysses I thought his name was
the
Jesus.
Good book. No. The James Joyce. Okay, it doesn't matter. Anyway.
You said the book as if like universally far and wide we all know of the book, and
I was the book Ulysses. I only know of the book and the Grant.
I understand now, but I definitely was like the book, and she's must be talking
clear,
about the Bible.
I haven't read the book. Apparently, it's like a really tough read. Okay, so
okay, good to know. Well, between the two of us, you're bound to read it before me. So tell me how it goes.
Someday in the afterlife, maybe.
So Ulysses. Not the book, the person, G. Griffith, who I like that his initials spell UG. He would sell farm tools. That was his job. And at 1 a.m., he is walking down Main Street on his way home. So basically, as he's going down the road, he sees this very bright light glowing on one of the building's rooftops. And keep in mind, this is 1903. There's not like fairy lights and, battery
Someone
packs.
has their catio set up to be all like automatically lit up at night. Yeah,
exactly. So he sees a light and he's like, well, that's a newfound thing I've never seen in my life.
Newfangled contraption.
And it's a very bright light, and he says it's way too bright to be an oil lantern. I would imagine. So could you really see an oil lantern light from a few blocks down up? Like
probably not. I mean,
it would look like a firefly, like a tiny little thing.
It'd be really distant.
So he sees this bright glowing light. He says it's way too bright to be an oil lantern, and he has a hunch for some reason that it's something bad. He thinks maybe there's robbers that broke into this building or something. Again,
Ooh.
This makes no sense to me because I feel like we took quite a leap from like, what's that light? It must be robbers.
Okay, but imagine like how irrational your mind would trying to be rationalizing this. I feel like you'd be like, oh gosh, like because my mind, as a very anxious person, would probably be like, cool, the world's ending, someone's getting robbed.
You're right.
I'm
thinking too present day. I'm like, it's like, oh, it's a light. Who gives a shit? But yeah, if it's something more rare,
like out of the ordinary. Yeah.
Part of you would be like, what is happening? Okay, so you're right. Thank you for humbling me.
I just feel like someone needs to stand up for Ulysses, for UGG. So that's me. I'm doing
Well, he has a whole book apparently named after him. So
he does. And a shoe brand.
And a president. So he had a hunch it was robbers, and on his way to go check it out, which I love that he checked it out, because in my mind, if I saw robbers, I think I'd be like, okay, well, I'm going to
He's a modern day hero,
I know. Well, I guess what was he going to do? Use his cell phone and text the police in 1903? I guess it's up to you back then. So he heads towards the building, and the light that he saw jumps off of the roof. Glides across the street like a little sugar glider. Lands on another roof. And at this point, Ulysses tries again, running after it to see what it is.
A little reckless. Reckless.
Like, it was already weird to me that you were ballsy enough to run after multiple robbers in your head, and now you're going to run after this like
sugar glider
of light. Yeah. So he's running after it, but it keeps moving, and eventually it floats up to the sky and vanishes. The next day, I wrote him as Ugg, which is hysterical, but I meant great. Ulysses. Next day, Ulysses tells people what he saw, and again, he's one of those like on the council, prominent businessmen, respected by the community people. So they believe him right away. Wow. And they're like, all right, that's kind of freaky. Anyway, have a good day, Ulysses.
Anyway,
And
have a good day. Okay.
like,
Cool.
maybe you were just drunk or something. I don't know. Like,
Classic.
yeah. They think it's weird and they believe him, but they're like, well, what are we going to do about that? And so the next night, which is now September 30th, 1903, it's after midnight, which is right around the same time as the previous night. The local physician, his name was Dr. Alcott, he wakes up to a very, very bright light coming through his window, which that would freak me out more if it was coming from outside, because I'd be like,
absolutely.
If it's not a torch, what is light doing outside at night? You know?
Yeah, into my window? Forget it.
So the light totally freaks him out. He jumps out of bed, grabs his gun, and heads outside to chase it. Okay. Why is everyone chasing these things?
Listen, I
whatever.
don't know.
That did not evolve with us into the present day.
No.
If anything, I've learned. I'm like, I don't need to find out.
Hide under the covers.
I'm like, that's a funky light. I hope someone else talks about it one day, because
Cool.
I'm not gonna. So he runs outside to chase it down, and outside he sees, quote, a half human, half animal with great bat-like wings, and a giant blunt horn in the center of its forehead.
Whoa.
And this light beam was coming out of the horn.
Whoa. My horn can pierce the sky.
Could certainly pierce the darkness. It does. It was like he had his own little like natural headlamp.
How cute.
That's nice.
I love that he can't turn it off though, clearly, because he's like trying to run away from everyone. And I'm like, just turn off your horn.
I feel like he's looking left to right trying to find like a place to hide, and like it's just like light.
Seriously,
shoom,
I hope
shoom,
nobody
shoom.
has epilepsy. I mean, damn.
And this thing, by the way, is like trying to run from him. Like it's not even trying to like I want to know what until like these humans come in and like try to track it down. What is he doing with his light?
I mean, he's peering in windows. What does he think's going to happen?
I don't know. Maybe he's looking for.
Chased.
Maybe he's looking for something. A normal flashlight, so he doesn't.
Don't
have to
look
use
in my
his brain.
bedroom.
This light beam is coming from the horn, and Dr. Alcott shoots at this thing 5 times. Bang, 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 bang.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Did I do it right?
Yeah.
Dope. But the creature seemed unbothered. He was like, I don't think so.
I like how he's bothered by getting somebody running after him, but not by a gunshot.
Well, I think because he's like, these things without light beams on their horn are running after me.
Oh,
but
I see.
These bangs I don't recognize.
And those probably do have a little light when they come out, so.
Actually, yeah.
Yeah.
So Alcott runs inside and locks the doors, and he sits with his gun until morning, terrified that this thing is going to try to get him. The next day, nothing happened. Surprise, surprise. Dr. Alcott tells people what he saw, and now there are 2 respected men in town who are saying this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
People are very uncomfy. And the next day at 1 a.m., basically 24 hours later, on October 1st, a man named Clarence Dunn, who goes by
Leona's birthday.
That's lovely. What was I going to say about that?
I don't know,
remember.
but you didn't seem happy that I said it, and I apologize for interrupting.
No, I have pretzels next to me, and it was not you. It was a delay, and my animal brain went from snacks to my human brain at work, and I was like, oh, I have to say something.
Oh man,
so, I'm
You're
sorry.
The 2 sides of the human brain: the snack side and the speaking side.
Let's try it again.
Okay.
So on October 1st,
yeah, that's Leona's birthday.
Shut the fuck up.
You didn't know that?
I think I did, but I love the reminder.
Also, the 30th, the day before, is Alexander's birthday, so we got a little Libra action happening here.
You do realize, like, when she's older, you guys are just gonna have midnight parties to celebrate both people.
Honestly, that's exactly what I plan to do, but then each of them still want their own birthday, so we'll do like a cake on one side of midnight and a cake on the other side of midnight.
Fun! An 11:59 and a 12:01.
Isn't
That's
that
fun.
perfect?
So, a question: did you ever get him back with like the worst birthday you can ever imagine? Remember, he gave you like the worst birthday.
Oh yeah, I did, and then I filmed it, and then I never edited it because COVID hit, and I was like, I don't have time for that. But I have all of the files still on my computer. I forget what I even did. I think I went and bought him. I mean, this was his pre-veganism, so I'm sure I just went and bought him all of his least favorite foods. I don't remember. I don't remember him. I should go edit that together somehow.
I feel like it was a great gift that he gave you.
He
that
filled
memory.
a piñata with beans, like
Yeah,
literal
that's a good brother.
beans. That's disgusting. And then made me stand out in the yard and hit it.
You know what's disgusting? Him having to fill it, and you did not have to do that part.
He
I'm just saying.
didn't have to do that part either, okay? To be clear, nobody had to do it.
He went above and beyond to give you a memory.
By the way, it is to give you a memory, it sounds like. That video is still on the Beach Too Sandy YouTube, and it's heinous. And it was when I was turning 29, and he like threw me a 30th birthday just to like really, really rub it in. It was incredibly rude. He bought like those 30 balloons I'd always wanted, the big balloons, but he bought them for 30 instead of 29. It was very rude.
I think it's probably the most genius birthday I've ever heard of.
And then he bought me non-alcoholic beer. It was sick. It was a really sick prank he pulled.
Also, if it was pre-COVID, that means it was 2019, so it was really pre-TikTok, but in today's world, that would have been a fucking hit.
I know.
Video.
Maybe we should, somebody
it would have started a trend of
help, like the anti-birthday.
Yeah.
Birthday. Yeah. Well, somebody help me edit that video into a TikTok and then hit me up.
October 1st, Leona's birthday, 1 a.m. There's this man named Clarence Dunn. He goes by Peter. Okay.
Sure.
He was trying something, I guess. What's the nickname for Clarence?
Rency.
Are you telling the truth?
No. How would I know the nickname for Clarence?
I feel like Clarence is a name that obviously needs a nickname, and I don't know.
Clary.
Sea Dog? Sea Dog. Hang on a second. I have to look this up because it's going to drive me crazy. Nickname?
What if it's Peter?
Well, maybe that's why he picked Peter, because he was like, there's no good nickname.
We're going to look like such dummies.
Literally, it means, literally the nickname is Claire. Okay, well, that didn't help.
Clarence, yeah.
Okay, so now I'm not as confused by Peter picking Peter. He's like, that'll do.
He's like, Claire's not going to work for me.
Okay, so now every time I meet a girl named Claire, I'm going to go, oh my God, is that short for Clarence?
Oh, Clarence. I love that.
Okay, so Peter, he was walking to work. He worked at a bank. He's walking to the bank. Why he's walking at 1 a.m., God help me. I don't know. Maybe back then you had to go in really early and manually count the money. I don't know.
Probably some shit like that, or like open the vault with your hands.
Yeah, $1 bill, $2 bill. And they just do it all day.
Poor Peter.
So having heard in town about the recent events from these other two well-respected guys, he was bringing a gun with him everywhere. And I feel like 1903, that was okay. And in 2023, that's still okay in some places.
It's apparently okay still. Yeah.
So he brought a gun with him to work thinking if they thought it was burglars and I work at a fucking bank, like I'm definitely going to be ready to go. So while walking, Peter hears this weird garbling sound. It sounds like something being strangled. And then he's at the bank already. So he looks through the window because he hears it coming from inside and he sees the same bright light.
Oh no.
The light beams onto him and hits him smack in the face. And when the light kind of moves away, he has a moment where he sees this gigantic shape inside the bank. I would personally think you're seeing stars after being shot in the face with light like that.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't be able to see anything in the bank, but I guess he could still see this figure. And in this moment, he realizes something is in the bank and they're not supposed to be there. So he shoots through the window.
Okay.
So Peter goes in to the bank to see what exactly it is that he shot, but all he found inside were footprints. And these tracks were giant 3-toed footprints. Which apparently Peter plaster casted. He just fucking had all that kit on him at 1 a.m. with his gun.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he already shot through a window of his workplace into the inside. So I feel like he's probably like, well, I'm going to get fired anyway. I might as well bring my plaster kit.
I guess so. I just like that part. I have a hard time believing. That's immediately the least believable part. Like this light with made out of a horn on your head is more believable than this guy just carrying around at 1 a.m. in 1903 a plaster cast.
I'm not going to lie to you. I agree. Like on what? And also, wait, so he was the creature like making indentations on the floor? Like, how did he plaster cast it?
What did the floor of the bank look like in
floor made
1903?
of
Was it
mud?
dirt?
What is happening?
That's a great Maybe it was hardwood floor, but it had tracked mud in, but also it apparently flies.
Then how do you plaster cast that? Can you?
Yeah, can you inverse plaster cast where instead of getting the whole of a track, can you get the ridges of a track?
Maybe the thing had walked outside too, and so he's like, "Oh, I'll plaster cast the one outside."
Also, yeah, what happened when he shot and it didn't? Obviously, the bullet didn't either hit this thing or it hit it and it was impervious to it. So then did the thing just kind of like waltz on out and like open the door and just kind of keep walking down the road?
So we don't know. It literally the next point is just he plaster cast the footprint.
All that was left in the bank when he went to go look was footprints. So yeah, like could you at least follow the footprints to see where they went? Like
right.
So this bullet is probably my least believable bullet, I think.
Yeah, I'm struggling with this one.
Yeah, this one all of a sudden I'm like, we got to talk to Peter, who real name is Clarence, by the way. So everything is
he's
kind
already
of a
starting
story.
Off on a shaky foot in my mind.
A shaky foot. We should plaster cast it.
Yeah.
I have a kit with me right now.
Yeah, I know you do. That's the thing is one of our dumbasses would carry a plaster kit around in our purse or like my turtle would definitely have a plaster casting kit in there.
Between the two of us, I think we own just about one of everything at all times.
Yeah, I mean, we'd literally be set if we ever found a cryptid on the loose. I mean, except a gun. Neither of us have that. So I feel like anything else.
I would have the plaster kit, but you would have like some weird surveillance downloaded on your phone. Because
like,
with your weird internet creeping abilities, you'd be like, give me 15 seconds.
I got to get it in the bank surveillance system.
If there's anyone I needed to break into a vault, I know I would call you before anybody else.
That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me. Thank you.
So Peter goes in to see what was shot. There was nothing there except footprints, which he apparently plaster casted. Even if he went back home to grab a plaster cast kit and came back, I would still be confused about this. So later that night, there's a man named O.V. White who he wakes up.
He goes by Clarence. That's what I'm guessing. I'm just trying to get ahead of the story.
OV stands for Clarence Peter, actually.
I mean, it's possible.
So he wakes up to the sounds, to these weird sounds outside of his home, and his home happens to be on Main Street, where there's already been a sighting. So he grabs his gun. He goes out to his window, ready to shoot whatever it is that he sees, which is such a risky way to go out. And as soon as he looks out the window, he sees this dark figure 15 feet away, and it is sitting on the telephone pole.
Oh.
Ugh.
What?
Like Spider-Man or something. So he shoots it. He apparently, everyone's shooting this thing, and nothing's working.
Shoots it.
I think he hit it, but the gunshot did nothing. In fact, this thing now shines its horn beam onto OV and begins reeking this horrible smell.
What?
So I don't know if the smell is like a defense mechanism, or maybe when you hit this thing, it has a puncture wound for a second and starts reeking. I don't know.
Okay, I like that theory.
Either way, it seems relatively unharmed. So maybe it's like if you like scratch yourself and like a little blood comes out, maybe that's what a bullet does to this thing.
His blood just smells really bad.
Putrid, apparently.
Yeah.
It was such a bad smell that it apparently stunned OV into blacking out the rest of the event. Which, she smelled like a dead fucking body. Am I right?
Oh no, now this thing's getting bullied psychologically too.
And by me, apparently.
By you.
So, the gunshot did happen to wake up OV's neighbor, Sydney. So Sydney runs outside, because I think back then it was like just loyalty, like if I hear a gunshot, I'm shooting too or something.
But it depends on what side, because this neighbor, if he's shooting a gun, I don't want anything to do with it. This guy, I want to see what's up. Yeah.
yeah. If this guy owes me like $80 in horseshoes or something, then whatever they were dealing with in 1903. So his neighbor Sydney, who's apparently on his side, runs outside, sees the monster himself. Sydney says that the monster was climbing down the telephone pole.
Oh, no.
But it was climbing down, quote, like a parrot using its beak.
Huh?
So it was almost like biting its way down.
Ew!
You know what I mean?
Why did that give me goose cam? I hate that visual.
And when standing, once it landed on the ground, it was at least 8 feet tall. And its horn, this light beam, shined, quote, as bright as an electric headlight.
What the fuck is going on?
So instead of flying away, which maybe it was hurt now, maybe he had shot it in a weak spot, because we hadn't even heard the bad smell thing yet.
Yeah.
So maybe he is weakened in some way. Instead of the creature flying away like it has in the past, because it had these massive, apparently featherless wings, so like bat wings almost, he kind of flapped them, but instead of taking flight, the early morning train passed by and the sound scared him. And so instead of flying away, he kind of like tucked in and ran on all fours.
Ew.
And he runs out of the neighborhood or down the street and toward the old coal mines. And its wings were still flapping on its back as it ran away.
That's traumatizing to witness. I'm sorry.
That was a lot of information.
I'm
if
scared.
If I saw that in real life, truly forget it.
I would log off. I'm signing out. I'd be like, good night. I'm going to bed. And
my AIM sound would go doo-doo-doo or whatever.
Yeah, my away message is up for good.
It would be the door slam sound.
Oh, the door slam. So depressing. Mine always went moo. And I thought
you were a cow?
Yeah, and I feel like it just annoyed everyone.
Okay, here's the thing. There was this one girl. I'm not going to say her name because I think she listens to the podcast.
Uh-oh. You know who you are.
I don't think she knows who she is, but Allison knows who she is because we accidentally ran into her last time we were in Fredericksburg together, and I went, that was the girl I had a crush on. I thought this girl hung the moon. And by the way, so did every other queer person being raised female at the time. And every single guy, everyone, like she hung the moon. Everyone was in love with her. And where was I going with this? I already got blinded by my memory of her. Her AIM. I was always too scared to IM her. We weren't close enough where I could just randomly IM her, except we were like on a sports team together, and that's all I'm going to say. And so every now and then during that season, I could IM her and be like, oh, what game's next or whatever. And then I'd be like, oh, blah,
who are
blah,
we
blah.
playing tomorrow?
Yeah, anything to get through the door. Her AIM walk-in sound was the moo. And every time anybody had the moo, I would hear it from my laptop wherever I was in the room and freak out and run to my computer hoping it was her. And then I mean, I'm sure this is like a universal experience, but like I would never even IM her. I would just sit there and gaze upon the fact that she was online. And then the second she like would leave and like sign off, my heart would be broken even though no moves were made.
It was like the darkest thing, and it's like, well, I wasn't gonna do anything, right? But I'm like,
we felt together. We felt like we were in the same room for a second.
I totally was the same way. I would like hear the sound and run to my computer to see who it was, and then like just like stare at their profile and like
for hours, and then
I don't know what,
and do nothing about it. I would do nothing about it. I really wish there was still an AIM day where like nobody texted, nobody DM'd. The only way you could communicate was AIM.
I kind of want to relive AIM with you. Like I feel like we would have the most unhinged conversations.
Homie, you realize that AIM still exists. We could probably still sign on.
Okay, let's do that.
I would love to.
My username is I'm always crazy 444 in case you forgot.
Home slice. I know. I'll find you.
And I go moo, and nobody waited till I logged on and stared at my profile.
What I'm saying is, even if it were you, anytime I heard the moo, I would come running to my computer hoping it was her.
I love that I was just like Pavlov's dogging you.
Yeah. If I ever heard a moo and we were friends, I would have been like, oh, it's just Christine.
I'm like, God damn it, Christine.
Oh my God. Anyway, where were we?
I don't know. I'm so sorry. I literally said I have such a long story today, and then I immediately derailed every 5 seconds.
It's okay. I'm still thinking about her. Especially with when Allison met her in Fredericksburg, and it was with my mom. It was just me, my mom, and Allison.
I hate to tell you, but like she definitely knows who she is now if she's listening. Like how many people could this possibly be? And like she knows what her username sound was. I mean, come on.
Anyway,
good story.
Where were we?
I don't know.
OV White.
Ooh.
Oh man. Okay, as I'm looking for my notes, tell me the name of one of your crushes.
Oh boy. Okay, there was Ian and Henry and
Henry, I've never heard about Henry. What was he like?
Oh, God, don't even get me started. What a mess. What a mess.
I like the name Henry.
I do too.
Did we like him? After, like, as an adult, do we regret liking him?
I don't know whatever happened to him, to be honest.
Henry, are you listening?
No, I don't think so.
Anyway, I found our spot. So the creature was now running on all fours toward the coal mines, its wings still flapping on its back. Ovi and his neighbor Sydney both told their stories, and the town of Van Meter is now officially scared because 5 well-liked people have now all seen this thing, tried shooting at it, and nothing has stopped it. Now, theories are circulating. What could this thing be? And so one rumor was that it was even an antediluvian creature, which biblically is an animal pre-Noah's Ark Great Flood. That was like one random theory. Really, there are no solid guesses, but everyone's freaked out maybe because there's no solid guesses. So just the mystere of it is really terrifying people. Soon others reported very weird things, especially noises in the defunct mine shafts, which have now become the mine shafts are near what's now a brick factory. So a lot of people working at the brick factory are saying there are some crazy things going on in those mine shafts, including sounds that, quote, sounded like Satan and his imps getting ready for battle.
Ew.
Which, like, talk about flowery writing, though. Like,
seriously, they knew what they were doing.
They knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
If only they could describe the sound of the moo on AIM and just how it
You've already done that
tickle
for us.
all of us.
You've literally already painted the most beautiful picture with words today.
Thank you. All right, October 3rd. Is that anyone's birthday, Christine? It's Mean Girls Day.
I was going to say, it's probably some important date, and then I remembered about Mean Girls.
Okay, so on October 3rd, the whole town's wearing pink. It's 1 a.m. And there's this guy named J.L. Platt Jr., and he is the manager of the brick factory that's now either near the mines or is the mines. I think it's just near the mines. It's just near the mines. And he also reports as the manager, as like the guy running the show around here. He's like, no, there really are some crazy sounds going on in those mine shafts.
Uh-oh.
I guess his employees were freaked out, or maybe he wanted some clarity. So he goes looking in the shafts for these sounds. And he doesn't get very far because pretty much right away comes a monster out of the mine shaft.
What?
The monster everyone's been talking about.
Oh, no.
And a second smaller monster, his little baby.
His imp.
His little baby.
Aww.
I don't know if it's his baby or maybe it's like his little brother or something. But it seems that they are
a baby monster.
A parent-child duo.
Aww.
Both with blinding horn lights. Now I got 2 of them to deal with.
Oh, boy.
So, nearby employees report seeing this event happen where they come out of the mine shafts, then they see the 2 creatures fly out of the mine shafts and disappear into the night sky. So now the people of Van Meter know that these things are living in the old mine shafts. So what's the next obvious move? Say it with me, start a mob. So
wait,
at dusk...
I'm not even kidding. It literally glitched right when you said whatever you just said.
They started a mob.
Started a mob. Okay, I heard they sobbed. And I said they sobbed. Yeah, I guess I would also sob. I don't know. I don't know what else there is to do. But okay, I guess I was wrong.
Started a mob.
Got it. Pitchforks, torches, the whole 9 yards?
I imagine so. Really any weapon you could grab.
Oh my God, I just figured it out. It's that fucking guy. Who is the first guy?
What?
Sorry. Who is the first guy in your story?
I'm
sorry.
His name is Ulysses.
Ulysses, he's behind all of it. He sells farm equipment.
Oh.
He sold those pitchforks to every single member of this town.
Christine, I think you just cracked the case.
Listen, I'm in the mainframe.
I'm telling you, look, I was not kidding that like you could crack a bank vault just by thinking about it for 5 seconds. That was amazing.
I mean, listen, selling farm equipment, suddenly everyone needs a pitchfork. It just kind of writes itself, you know? Whip them up into hysteria.
I would give anything to be able to time travel back to 1903 right now and hot off the press, we have cracked the case.
Okay, but here, get this. This was my other theory. That this monster thing is literally a time traveler who just has like a headlamp.
Shut the fuck up, Christine.
So if you go back now, you're the monster and we're just completing the circle.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. You're the monster. I knew it.
I'm itchy with excitement. Hang on. I'm so impressed with your brain. It is deranged.
Everyone's like, that makes no sense, Christine, but M is my biggest hype man.
I'm so proud of every single thing you've ever done.
Aww.
Including this exact moment. I'm like, you were the smartest person I've ever met.
Well, you're the monster, so we should all be applauding you, really.
That's me. Oh, and I brought Leona with me, by the way.
It's her birthday. She had to come.
What are we to do? I guess we finished the story, but I don't really want to.
Oh, okay. We can talk about AIM again.
Man, I really lost my track. Oh, I was going to say, obviously the time travel part is a bit of a stretch, but I think you are absolutely fucking on to the farm thing. That makes so much sense.
I'm just saying, I don't know.
I'm just saying he should have at least been interrogated just a little bit.
He should have at least explained himself when he bought like a Porsche the following year, and everyone was like, "Where did he get the money for that?" You know, it's like, and like the Porsche tractor or whatever the equivalent was at the time.
Sometimes I don't know why I'm on this show because you're just the funniest. Like, what am I doing here?
Right.
Like, I think I throw you.
Full of shit.
I think I lob you the hitters and then you knock them out of the park.
You're so full of shit.
Okay, so
you're the funny one. We all know it.
I really am still trying to figure out what I am on this show besides just helping you shine. Oh, okay. That's fine. Okay, so they start a mob with apparently pitchforks that for some reason say Ulysses Grant or something on the bottom.
They say UGG. It was the first UGG brand.
Fucking Christine Schieffer, shut up. Like, let me have a minute.
No, I guarantee you I'm pissing everyone off. They're like, can you just let Em tell the fucking story?
You're not pissing me off at all. I'm just getting madder and madder that every funny thing comes out of your mouth, like, nonstop.
No, I'm sorry.
That
Stop
line,
interrupting.
That was a good line. That was a good one.
Oh,
I can't wait to be funny again, Christine. You'll see. They'll all see.
Just wait till my story about murder. Then you can really shine.
You know what? I would love to have to tell a murder and then you throw curveballs like this at me because it's not so easy.
Bad. I would be screwed.
I wonder if people think you're the funny one because you have more opportunity to be the funny one.
Ample opportunity, yeah.
People think I'm probably just so dry because, like,
no,
how am I going to make murder funny? You tell me.
Has anybody ever combined the words M and dry in a sentence? I don't think so.
My dermatologist, but other than that.
Oh, a zinger, another classic zinger from DM Schultz. Here we go.
Just hitting myself wherever I can.
Just going for it.
Okay. Mob, pitchforks, ugh. At dusk, the townspeople got together. Here's the other weird plan that they had. The pitchforks I almost understood because, like, at least that's what a mob does when they're chasing a cryptid.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing they do, they turn on every light in town. I don't know why.
That doesn't make sense.
I don't know why. They say the reason of the goal, the reason is that the goal was to hopefully scare the monsters away from their homes. But these are monsters who fucking love light. They have it in their heads.
Their whole thing.
Their whole thing is they like light.
I feel like if there's lights everywhere, then how are you going to differentiate the lights from the monster light?
Christine?
I'm just saying.
When I tell you your brain is always on top of it, I mean it here too.
Oh, really?
Because that's what I thought. I was like, if it's going to, why wouldn't you want it to be pitch black so you can see like a Batman signal hitting the sky?
You're going to start pitchforking everything in sight.
Okay, raspy voice, relax.
I know, wasn't that good? I liked it.
Was that on purpose?
No. I don't know how to, I wish.
Okay, so they turn on all the lights because apparently that will really just scare them. Sure. And after all the lights were on, which by the way, it's 1903. That's like 3 lights.
They put on like 3 oil lights. They're like, look at us go.
I think everyone just wanted to brag about their lights. So
yeah,
they
somebody
turn
got a
on
new fireplace or something. It's like
they turn on their candles.
Fucking whoop.
And the mob, after they turn on all the lights in town, why wouldn't you just wait till morning? Like, but that's natural light. You wouldn't have to turn any of your lights on.
Oh, yeah. But I guess he only comes out at night.
Which is extra stupid because if he doesn't come out during the day, why would you want to make it look like day so he won't come out? But then also if you think, oh, but if you turn on all the lights, then they'll think it's day.
I don't know.
Just absolutely the most backwards thinking I've ever heard in my life. So anyway, apparently they think this will make them want to fly around, even though it's never been seen once in the day.
Yeah.
And the mob stands by the brick factory and waits for the creatures to come out of the mines to begin their day and fly around the sky, as if they ever have done that.
Okay.
They waited all night for these creatures to come out of the mine shafts until sunrise. And at 6 a.m., all of a sudden the two creatures finally not fly out of the shafts to like begin their day, but are returning home and fly into their shafts, which makes so much more sense because it's about to be daylight. So now they're going to go hide and hang out at night.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. Hang on. Now my brain's confused. Anyway, I don't know how it works, but they are flying back in. And as they're flying towards the mob to get to their mine shafts, they just open fire on these creatures in the sky. Apparently, the level of intensity of this attack, quote, would have sunk the Spanish fleet. So, which, like, I don't know about that. I think that was a man talking about his one experience in battle.
He also had one candle in his house, so it's fine. Like, relax, guy.
And so apparently they really shot at these things, but the creatures, although making terrible noises and once again began to reek a horrible stench, they were pretty much unharmed and flew right into the shafts and it just took cover.
God.
So now the town knows for sure that their defenses are not working on these creatures. Reminder, these creatures, by the way, haven't done anything
That's what
to
I was
anyone.
going to say. Have they hurt anybody? No,
They've
right?
hurt or damaged nothing. They've hurt nobody. They're just existing. Sometimes maybe like their light flashes into your eyes, but that's it. And that's it. And now the whole town wants them murdered. Terrified anyway, the mob tries to barricade the mine shafts before the next nightfall to keep the monsters away from Van Meter. So now just like trapping them in there until they die.
Horrible. Burying them alive.
And a local reporter called H.H. Phillips, he wrote about the events, and he printed the only source published story on the monster, which was that day, 10/3, October 3rd's Des Moines Daily News. So, fun fact. And after that night, the monsters were never seen again. So I guess they were successfully buried alive.
That's horrible.
Or I like to think, I mean, they've got like lighthouses on their heads, right? So like maybe they can teleport and they just moved away.
Maybe they found another exit. I really hope so, because that's really sad.
Maybe they found a shovel from Ulysses down in there and just dug their way out.
I hope so.
That next week, the same paper, the Des Moines Daily News, tried to do damage control about the situation, and they said that H.H. Phillips, who wrote all about this experience, they said that his account was greatly exaggerated, which I wonder why the Des Moines Daily News was okay with him writing that story, but then the next week had to go, never mind, our editor wasn't in town or something last week, and that slipped through the cracks.
Yeah, what is that about?
I don't know, but after this, the town was worried that this would hurt local business, and the general consensus ever since has been that the lights were just burglars or pranksters. One theory is that they were extraterrestrials, which is my favorite one. One paranormal investigator named Chad Lewis said that the strange lights in the sky had been reported in Iowa for the last decade. In fact, one set of mysterious lights in Iowa was heavily reported on in 1897, which was not even 10 years before this event. So
weird.
So something has been going on within those 10 years. And
I'm just thinking Iowa cornfields, crop circles. I don't know. There's something there.
It's a perfect space for someone to crash land.
Not super populated, like dense population wise. I mean,
some also think that it could just be two birds. There were, I don't know why they have fucking headlamps on. But
2 8-foot tall birds,
Well, so they think it could be the sandhill crane or the whooping crane, but
We're
a crane
always
bird.
saying this about Mothman. All right, I'm done with this.
It's a crane, and if so, if it really was a crane, the light on its head, the one horn in the middle of its head like a unicorn, the no feathers on its wings, the 8-foot height, and being bulletproof are all very wild exaggerations that it's almost as if it's not a crane at all. Only the wings are the accurate parts of that story.
Yeah.
the same guy, Chad Lewis, also he said whatever it is, the most important part is just digging up the cryptid lore because it can inspire interest in local history. So even though some people thought it might hurt local business, it could help because it could drive tourism in. He also is the one that coined the name Van Meter Visitors, purposefully choosing a neutral name because they never did any harm. There's no reason to make them seem bad.
I like that immediately. I said, it sounds like a serial killer / stalker. Like, clearly I did not find it a neutral name.
I think you are primed to think like that.
That's true.
And there's some other people who, don't think that they didn't cause any harm. So there, in 2013, one local named Jelena Walker, she said, "I believe there is a God, so I believe there is a demon, and I think it's evil." So
all right, calm down, Jelena. Jeez.
Jelena really has an opinion. In 2013,
God, she just wants to get her pitchfork out, I think.
Literally over 100 years later, she is convinced that this is demonic. So Jelena and I probably wouldn't get along.
No.
Of course, Van Meter, Iowa is now the host of the Van Meter Visitor Festival.
Of course.
And Travel Iowa says that the festival has, quote, guided monster walking tours, paranormal presentations. Why have we not been invited? Monster-themed games, drinks, food, and more.
Hello? Can we go to this? I'm not even joking.
I would love to.
And I've never been to Iowa.
Just to end this properly, I have a little picky for you.
Whoa. That is not what I pictured.
Me either. But I mean, I guess maybe it's because it's like currently on all fours. But I guess if we were standing, it kind of looks like what I thought. I mean, it's a bird with bat wings and a flashlight on its head.
Its head looks like a dinosaur. It looks like a dinosaur, this thing.
See, I think of it as it just looks like a featherless bird.
What's wrong with its head, though?
I don't know. It looks like a parrot's head to me.
Really? I think it looks like a skull.
Oh. Well, maybe.
Well, we'll post it on Instagram.
Yeah, everyone decide if it's
you let me know.
Dinosaur or a bird. I don't know.
I think it's a little bit
birds
of both. Are dinosaurs, so it does kind of.
That's true. It looks
up.
like a pterodactyl with a flashlight on its head, a laser beam on its head.
Yes, that's.
Speaking of pterodactyl, can I tell you, my aunt is really going through it right now. Also medically, she's in the hospital right now, and I found this. I found this place where you could customize stuffed animals and send them to people in the hospital.
How cute!
And I got her this stuffed pterodactyl, and on the belly I wrote "Stop feeling terrible," and terrible has a P.
That's so cute,
like pterodactyl.
That's the cutest thing I ever heard.
I was like, I'm pretty sure this is the best stuffed animal that's ever existed. So
I'm pretty sure you should sell that idea.
If people would like to use that idea, if you find yourself a stuffed pterodactyl and you can write something on the belly.
It's really adorable. It's really adorable, Em.
Thank you. All right. Well, anyway, that is the Van Meter Visitor.
Well, I was only 9 hours and 10 minutes, so if you want to drive over there.
Oh, hey, okay, yeah. And we can do that on the way to the Mothman Festival, or
it's totally opposite, but, we
should just do a Cryptid Festival road trip. And because we also have to do, is it Kentucky that has the Kelly Hopkinsville? That one I would love to go to as well.
That one's close to me.
One thing we should do for 2023 is actually have a calendar of all of the Cryptid festivals and see if we can get to as many as we can. I would love to do that.
I would.
I would love to make 2023 our Cryptid Festival year.
I'm really into that.
I, too, am really into that.
It's a great idea.
Eva, call Mothman.
Write it down.
Get Bigfoot on the horn immediately.
Call the nearest crane. Or whatever. Sandhill crane.
Anyway, that is that's all I have to say, my friend. And you dropped something that it sounded expensive. It was your cold brew, wasn't it?
No, it was a gallon of water.
Was it open?
Yes.
Not Eva. Christine.
Oh, Freudian slip.
Eva, call Dyson. Call Bounty, the quilted quicker picker-upper. Not an ad.
I actually have a roll right next to me. Also not an ad. But if they want to send me some, because I use a lot of them, as you can
We
imagine.
spill a lot.
In this house.
Oh, Allison's aunt, who's also in town, she accidentally spilled like her cup of coffee on me yesterday. And she felt so bad about it. And she was like, I'm so clumsy. And I was like, I promise to God, I am so much clumsier. Like, this is not worth your time being stressed about.
The least of it. Yeah. You're lucky you spilled on M of all people.
Yeah, on my black pants that won't even go stained.
Yeah.
Are you good? Do you need to clean up a gallon of water?
No, like honestly, I already cleaned this sofa from the wax that I got all over it, which by the way, the paper towel trick worked so much better than I thought.
The putting an iron on it?
Yeah, with ironing it, just like immediately came out. Oh, that's why this paper towel roll is here. Yeah, that makes sense.
Oh my God.
But yeah, so dumping water on it is like nothing. Anyway. Okay, here we go. I have a story for you now. This is the story of the Connecticut River Valley Killer.
Oh.
Serial killer.
Okay. Ooh, okay.
Yep.
I say ooh, but I also mean ooh.
I know. I think it's been a while since I've done a serial killer, so I don't know how long, but...
How many victims... Can you tell us in advance how many victims there were?
I think 7 confirmed.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Okay.
So this took place between 1978 and 1988, which I do feel like is the serial killer prime time. Like I feel like 70s are known as like the big serial killer time, like when that emerged as like a massive thing.
Another thing I would like you to cover if you ever do like a history presentation episode is why the 70s was such a big time for serial killers compared to today. I do believe in like the Roe v. Wade argument. There's like,
I mean, I know what Roe v. Wade is.
No. But there's like there's an argument that before we had Roe v. Wade, a lot of people were having children when they couldn't, and they weren't either. I'm not going to say it as eloquently as a lot of other people, but there either wasn't enough access to give that kid the best life, or they were being neglected, or they, it all kind of turned out in a way where, I guess the kids just kind of those women had access to abortions when they wanted them. So many children, I don't know what the right.
I know what you're
word.
saying. So basically,
so many people back then had kids when they didn't want them, and there was an influx in children, and we didn't have more of a control.
Weren't properly cared for, or
exactly. And that is one of the running theories that that's why there was so much higher crime in certain spaces. And but then when we had access to abortion and people could control whether or not they were ready for a kid or if they wanted a kid. Again, this is just only some people had that access, but all of a sudden crime rates went down in the future and all this stuff. So you can predict based on abortion laws 20 years into the future what crime rates will look like. There was some just like documentary short I saw on it, but I wonder if that contributed to the serial killer era.
Very interesting.
Sorry for like jumbling through that. I was trying to remember as I was saying it.
It's a hard thing to explain. I feel like that does make sense. I mean, I definitely want to look into that because it would make sense that if you're unable, and this is all conjecture on my part, but I have to imagine that if you were to give up your child for adoption in like the 50s, or not even necessarily adoption, but just like to a home for children, I imagine standards were different then than they are now.
Well, even mental health, like you couldn't,
exactly.
Or they thought like lobotomies were good for you. And so like if a lot of people that you've covered happen to have head injuries or something, maybe they just say like, oh, he got knocked around, he's fine now. And like, you don't realize, I don't know, that could be a whole other thing on top of Roe v. Wade. But I saw it was like one of those
fascinating.
It was one of those TikToks where it was like a multi-parter, but it was, it was fascinating that
I just found something interesting that matches kind of what you're saying.
What's that?
But it's more about the parents. So this is from Rolling Stone. So this guy, Vronsky, who began studying serial killers, Peter Vronsky, criminal justice expert, he has deduced that serial killers generally develop the personality and compulsion benefiting a killer when they're young. By the time they're 14, they're basically fully formed. They generally start killing in their late 20s. As such, he looked back at what was happening in the world when murderers like John Wayne Gacy, Jeffrey Dahmer, and Ted Bundy were growing up and discovered a link. They were all born during wartime. In cases, for example, like the BTK killer, Dennis Rader, Richard Cottingham, the torso killer, their fathers were returning war veterans with PTSD, which was not a diagnosable illness until the 80s. In short, these children were already predisposed to violence and were raised in potentially violent, likely broken homes. Ooh. Yikes. And that does fit, I feel like, with what you're saying. I mean, not necessarily maybe a direct correlation, but it definitely would make sense that there would be more neglect if children were, unable to be cared for or were not wanted.
There's definitely something on it. Not that like access to abortion causes more or less serial killers, but it was like a general crime. And so, but I don't know if based on the era, I think it was also in Freakonomics or something where it said like you could always predict like 20 or 30 years ahead based on the laws today because those kids are going to grow up. And so anyway, didn't mean to totally derail us, but I would love for you to eventually do a presentation on like the intersectionality of the 70s and why there was such a it's crime time.
Because obviously there are obviously looking back, it's like, oh, we know all the big names. Whereas I assume in 30 years, we could probably 50 years look back at today and be like, we know the big names from now, So I can see that, but it is called the golden age of serial killers. Yikes. So, I mean, here's just one more example, Connecticut River Valley. This guy was active starting in 78, all the way to 88. He was a serial killer who terrorized the Connecticut River Valley in New Hampshire and Vermont. And he would stalk a stretch of Interstate 91 where he abducted women from the roadside and then stabbed them to death.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, it's really heinous. So the interstate runs along 255 miles of the Connecticut River, and the killer would abandon his victims in the woods along the banks of the Connecticut River. Now, this is the most frustrating part. The identity of the Connecticut River Valley Killer is still unknown to this day.
Of course.
And it is one of the most haunting cold cases of New England for obvious reasons. And today we're going to cover the crimes and the victims and one potential suspect.
Okay.
So there are 7 confirmed victims associated with the killer. They are all women aged 17 to 38. There was Kathy Milliken, 26, Mary Elizabeth Critchley, Bernice Courtemanche, Ellen Ruth Freed, Eva Marie Morse, Linda M. Moore, Barbara Agnew, 38. So, in May of 1984, 17-year-old Bernice Courtemanche lived with her boyfriend, Teddy Barry, and his parents in Claremont, New Hampshire. Bernice's home life had been a little rocky, so she moved in with her boyfriend's family, the Barrys, and started working as a nurse's aide at the Sullivan County Nursing Home. Teddy's family said Bernice was a joy to have around. His parents started to see her as their own daughter, like she folded right into the family. And Bernice and Teddy were already talking about marriage. They were really close, and she loved being a part of his family. So let's just start on a depressing ass note.
I was going to say, I don't want to get too attached.
I know. It's horrible.
Me.
Yeah. One afternoon, Teddy invited Bernice over to his sister's place in Newport after work. At 3 o'clock, she asked a coworker for a ride home where she had a snack and picked up some stuff for the night. Then Teddy's dad offered Bernice a ride, but she said no thanks. She would just hitchhike the 10-mile drive to Newport. So Bernice was only days away from taking her driving test, and she would then be able to drive herself. But in the meantime, she regularly hitched rides. She never had any issues. This was just like day to day at the time. Not a big deal to hitch a ride. Very safe area. New Hampshire was famous for its low crime rates and overall safety, even at a time, like we were just saying, when violent crime in the U.S. was at an all-time high. So in recent years, at the time, several young girls like age 13 and under had already been abducted and murdered in the area. But that killer was caught, and it was chalked up to, being young and defenseless little girls. And so Bernice was older, she was 17, she could hold her own. So nobody worried basically when she said she would hitch a ride. So Bernice said, I'm just going to hitch a ride. Don't worry about it. And she never showed up to Newport. When it started to get dark, Teddy and his brother-in-law drove around looking for her, and they figured, well, maybe she just got unlucky hitching and she'd still be on the roadside waiting for someone to pick her up, so we'll probably just spot her along her usual path. But of course, they could not find her anywhere. They thought she must have changed her plans and maybe didn't have access to a landline and so wasn't able to update them. Okay. She was a very independent girl, and so that becomes kind of a through line through all of these victims. Very independent, and so they just said, oh, well, maybe she just made up her mind to go somewhere else. So they went to bed, but when Bernice was still a no-show the next morning, they called the police and filed a missing persons report. Pretty quickly, a report came in that a witness saw Bernice get into a white pickup truck with 2 or 3 men inside, but Teddy was skeptical about this because even though she regularly hitchhiked, she had rules where she would take rides from women, was cautious around men, and would absolutely never take a ride with more than one man in the vehicle. So he was like, that doesn't really match up. That's not how she would have done this. A few days later, another witness said he had seen Bernice, who he recognized from the newspaper's missing persons report, getting out of a white Ford across the river from Lebanon, New Hampshire, in Vermont. And this would place her 18 miles north of her destination, which is a strange sidetrack. Yeah. Teddy's mother, this is horrible, started having nightmares about Bernice being lost in the woods. So,
oh, God.
I know. I mean, the helpless feeling there, I can't imagine. So she started going out on her own, just hiking everywhere and looking for Bernice, thinking she must be out here somewhere. Terrible. And, of course, there was no sign of the girl that she had hoped would become her daughter-in-law. That's how close they were. Leads dwindled and things started to seem hopeless. And unfortunately, that year, Bernice was not the only girl to go missing. So 26-year-old Ellen Ruth Freed was working as a nurse at the Valley Regional Hospital that same year. And one day in July, a call came in to police that a car was abandoned on a dirt road in the woods. Okay. Police figured it belonged to Ellen, but she was nowhere to be found. And then Ellen didn't show up for work, and her coworkers said she was highly dependable and always considerate, so this was unlike her to just disappear. Ellen was known as being empathetic and caring, and like Bernice, she was fiercely independent and very brave, especially at the time, we're talking 50 years ago. It was just less likely to be, I think, described as independent as a woman back then.
God forbid.
Yeah. I mean, they meant it in a good way, but I just feel like it wasn't as common of a trait necessarily. So Ellen had moved to town after breaking it off with her longtime boyfriend, and she aspired to a life of travel and freedom. She loved when friends brought their kids over to visit. Neighbors would hear her playing banjo on summer nights, and nobody wanted to think of someone as kind-hearted as Ellen being in trouble. It was just such a horrible thought. So a search party of over 30 police and fish and game officers searched the woods where her car was found. And the hopeful theory that she was lost just started to kind of dwindle because they couldn't find her. Also, this area of woods was pretty sparse and pretty bare. So they kind of searched the whole thing and couldn't find her. One officer even said a child couldn't even get lost in there. So that's how scary this was, that they couldn't find her. That's so dark. It is very dark. So unfortunately, every possible lead on Ellen quickly fizzled out, and now there were 2 missing women in Claremont, and the following year, 1985, there would be a third. So 27-year-old Eva Morse is described by people who knew her as, and I want to be clear, I don't know if it's Eva or Ava, but I'm so used to saying Eva that I'm just going to go with Eva. Sure. So Eva Morse was described by people who knew her as tough, athletic, and energetic. She grew up at the time as, quote, one of the boys. And She loved hiking, swimming, and sports. She was known to reject the norm. So she was labeled a tomboy. She was also queer and she was fat, all of which were very uncommon labels for women at the time. And when she was a kid, her dad had remarried. She came from like a pretty troubled situation because her new stepmom wanted nothing to do with his, quote, old children.
Oh.
And so she was just totally cast aside by her own family, like,
yeah,
just totally dismissed. And she ended up moving in with her half-sister, Noreen, who was 14 years older than her. And so Eva got pregnant when she was 17 and had a baby named Jenny. She left high school to work, and basically the people who knew her said everything she ever did, she did for Jenny. Like, Jenny was literally the most important thing in her life.
Okay.
Eva started dating women, and her family's reactions varied. There are a lot of labels from the time that label her as a lesbian, but like we don't really know because these are just
right.
She was known to date both men and women, so it's like, you know,
also if she were one of the boys, for all we know, that could have been
how
signs
she
towards,
identified, right?
Yeah,
exactly. Like
gender.
So there's like no clear. I mean, basically what I'm saying is I'm not comfortable labeling her as anything.
Sure, queer,
openly queer.
all.
Yeah, exactly. So there were, you know, this. I feel like also labels change so much over the decades. Like, who knows? You know, just lesbian in the 80s is like such a vague term.
Yeah.
So Noreen, her sister, who she lived with, struggled to understand the situation, but like loved Eva unconditionally.
Aww.
Eva made, I know, she really did have like a powerful network. So she made a small group of friends in the Valley LGBT scene. And these were all people that were considered outsiders of their communities. She devoted all of her time to her daughter. She worked really hard to provide for her. She couldn't afford a car, though, so unfortunately, she usually hitchhiked to work.
Oof. I can't imagine that being part of your everyday, like,
Isn't
I'll just
wild?
find a ride. I'll just bum a ride.
My anxiety would constantly be like spiked, like without the clear like reliability of getting to work, you know, like the work alone is stressful enough. I don't need like the anxiety
on
of
a
getting
daily
there
basis. It's
on
not like
time,
every
too.
It's not like every Friday. Yeah, on time. I never even to do it every single day as part of the routine. Also, is it bum a ride or thumb a ride? Because thumb, like hitchhiker thumb.
Well, I know it's bum a cigarette, so I just thought
right,
bum a ride.
Is it thumb a ride?
It's so stupid. Our podcast is so stupid.
Thumb a ride.
It is. You're so smart. It makes sense with your thumb.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, I can't imagine that being like, oh, it's 6 a.m. Better use my thumb and get a ride real quick.
Thumpkin, where's Thumpkin? Okay, I've been watching a lot of Miss Rachel. All right. So anyway, so she, but remember, her coworkers called her reliable and considerate. So like, she clearly wasn't just showing up for work at any old time. Like, she was getting there reliably every day with hitching a ride. I can't believe it. I think it
just, again, I'm thinking in
modern
present
context.
day. Yeah, because maybe back then, like, hitchhiking was just like, oh, any car is gonna stop for you.
I think so, especially like in rural areas. It was just like, well, you know,
someone needs a ride.
Hop on in. I'm going there anyway. Yeah.
What a wild time. I can't even imagine.
Wild time. I'm not interested. Thank you very much. So anyway, she's hitching rides to work, and in June, Eva disappeared. And of course, her older sister, Noreen, was terrified. She said, quote, "It must be something bad because she would never, ever take off and leave Jenny without making sure she was taken care of." So the investigation in Charleston, New Hampshire was slow. Locals talked about the way those people were unreliable. Gross. They said, well, you know, those people in the LGBT community, meaning, were unreliable. So, you know, it's not that shocking that she would run off and abandon her child.
Okay. Wow.
Cool. Get this. Eva's disappearance didn't even make the papers. So that's great. She, as we said, had never really fit in with mainstream society. Like I said, she was not straight. She was fat. She was poor. And she was a single parent. Basically, all of these
a monster in the village, obviously.
Yeah. A checkbox, like every box checked for like dismissive you know, society dismiss her. So people started, of course, because what else, making up stories about her abandoning Jenny and running off. That's not going to traumatize her poor daughter, you know?
Right. But like, forget all the other things where like everyone thought she was so devoted to her daughter up until this moment.
Yep. Just like throw that out the fucking window. Because she's a lesbian. So she must have just abandoned her child, you know?
Oopsies.
So they said she had done this before. She had not. And
what?
so
With what other child?
Just like left her there. And people were like, wait, no, she hasn't. She literally never did that. But, you know, people make up their own realities. So Noreen and Eva's childhood best friend, Rose, knew differently. Noreen drove to Claremont and put an ad in the paper, which prompted a reporter to go ask police about the investigation. Police seemed totally uninterested. And one officer said dismissively, I could get the search dogs out, but where would we start? It's like, that's your job, bud.
Yeah, are you talking to me about that? Are you talking to...
Yeah, what the fuck? You want me to tell you? So it was a full month before they finally set up a roadblock to question drivers where Eva worked. One woman came forward and said... A full month.
Well, then she's already, I mean...
Yeah, like, fuck you. I mean, really. One woman came forward and said she'd picked up Eva hitchhiking on her way to work that day.
Okay.
So that's a solid lead. Wish we could have gotten that information sooner, but okay.
Yeah, right.
The woman let Eva out at a local vet office, like an animal hospital, and Eva hitchhiked on from there. Okay, I know this is like a side note again, but imagine you have to hitchhike, but sometimes you only get dropped off part of the way. So you have to like take multiple cars.
There have been times, I mean, okay, this is like, this is not hitchhiking, but I've had to do that. I think we can all relate
to whatever you're about to say.
Okay.
I feel it in my bones.
It's obviously not hitchhiking, but I have done that with Ubers where I was driving 3 hours from the airport and I felt I wasn't going to ask someone to drive me 3 hours. So I took an Uber an hour. Then I got another Uber an hour. Then I got another Uber for an hour. And I was like, the fact that I'm so lucky that there would be access to cars at every hour mark. But like, can you imagine just being like, oh, I have to hope that now the next car I get in is going that far and in that direction without any stops and like wants me in their car and will stop for me, like, and is safe. Like
every day.
Oh my God.
And we'll get there on time. I mean, I can't. Yeah. It's just
like no driver is going to respect your needs before theirs. If you're like, I need to get to work now, step on it. And they're like, I'm getting some milk at the store.
Yeah.
Like,
just get out of my car then. Yeah. I feel like
must have just been such a fucking puzzle.
My dysfunction would just never allow this to happen for me. I would just not be able to do it. I would just give up. Like it's hard enough for me to get into a car to go to work, like when I worked at an office.
What happens if like you're working on a day where everyone else like got work off? Like, or what if there's like, what about inclement weather? What if someone else like got snowed in, like, and now you have less cars to pick from? Or like, what if like they're driving a safe route, but your route to work has black ice?
Especially in New Hampshire and Vermont.
Like, what are you to do?
Honestly, give up. That's what I would do. I would absolutely give up. I'm dead serious. I would just be like, forget it. I guess I'm not working. I don't know.
What a scheduling fiasco.
What a fiasco indeed. So this woman says, I picked her up, but I could only take her as far as the vet's office, as far as the animal hospital. And she was going to hitchhike from there the rest of the way to work. So first piece of the puzzle, they know the last place that she was seen safe. So now they had 3 women missing in this area. And that September of 1985, unfortunately, 2 men out target shooting in the Newport woods found human remains.
Ugh.
There were only bones and a single shoe, and they were partially swallowed up by an enormous hemlock tree's roots.
Oh.
Unfortunately, it turned out to be Ellen Freed.
Okay, well, I saw that coming, but yikes.
I know. So Ellen was the second victim that I mentioned who had moved there after breaking up with her boyfriend and had a lot of close friends and loved kids and all that. And her story was the one where her car was abandoned in the woods.
But you're asking me?
No, sorry. I'm just I'm just I'm just recapping like which one Ellen was, because I know there's a lot of names in this story. So
right.
Ellen.
Yeah, Ellen's the one that the two people were out in the woods and they found human remains.
Yeah, but I'm saying, so they found Ellen's remains, but Ellen was the victim whose car was found. It was the one before Eva whose car was found abandoned in the woods.
Gotcha. The way you paused, I was like, do you want me to say it back to you?
No, I was trying to piece it together in a coherent way because I know we've skipped down.
We've bounced around.
Yes, exactly. So unfortunately, the remains turned out to be Ellen Freed. And so the investigation was reopened, and police still did not make a connection between the three women. Some papers speculated Ellen and Bernice were connected, but they never included Eva because Ellen and Bernice were, quote, normal.
Okay. I hate that.
Yeah, they were considered normal, productive members of society. They had boyfriends, steady jobs, etc. Eva struggled financially, moved from job to job. Wasn't straight.
I was gonna say, like, you had me at, well, they had boyfriends.
It's
like, okay, well.
Yep. So police said she simply didn't fit the same profile as the other women, but what they failed to recognize is that what linked the women is that all three were independent and prone to be out alone, vulnerable, and two of them were last seen hitchhiking. So yeah, it does add up, you know?
Yep.
I mean, maybe the killer's type was not, you know, what their orientation was, but whether they were easily accessible, like his opportunity.
I have a hunch. Yeah, I don't think he was interviewing them to see what they were about.
Exactly. Thank you. In April of 1986, that was the following year, the Connecticut River Valley murderer, who still had no name or identity at the time, struck again. One April afternoon, Steve Moore came home from work. His wife, Linda, did the bookkeeping, and he had called to ask her to write a check for him to stop by and pick up, but she didn't answer the phone. So he and his coworker, Terry, drove home, and he's like, oh, we'll just stop by my house and have her write the check. And things looked normal. Their St. Bernard Abigail was lounging in the yard. Linda's shoes were in the grass beside a portable radio and a lounge chair, as if she'd just been out laying with the dog. But inside, he found Linda lying face down in a doorway.
Shit.
He turned her over and she was dead. She had clearly been attacked. She was covered in blood, and there was a cut on her so deep he could see bone.
Oh my God. Wow.
She had been stabbed more than 24 times.
24? Yeah. That feels so personal. Like, but like
such overkill.
But since there's, I mean, literally, and also like, I feel like because I know it's a serial killer, there's no way he had like a personal thing against any of these women. So it's just weird that if it was just like a standalone murder, I'd be like, oh, that's personal.
Yeah, but I think with serial killers, it often becomes like
a power thing.
No, like they're standing in for somebody, like so if there's a hatred toward women, for example, and a hatred toward their mother, for example, like
it's a projection of something personal,
like Ed Kemper, where he then finally did kill his own mother at the end of killing all those women, and he outright said, like, I hated my mother and this was like my outlet, you know.
Oh God, yeah, you're right.
So wow. I that's where my mind goes, that it's probably somebody who's well, clearly someone who hates women. I don't think that's really like up for grabs.
Clearly someone
debate.
Who's unhinged beyond repair.
Fully, yeah. So she had been stabbed more than 24 times. This is pretty dark. He checked her pulse and called an ambulance, but he was in shock, and it didn't quite click that she was gone right away.
Yeah.
So he told Terry, who his friend in the truck, his coworker, to come in, quote, my wife's been stabbed. And when the ambulance arrived, he just seemed like kind of despondent, like totally out of it.
I mean, there's no way.
How else would you, you know?
Yeah. Stunned is the only way you would be able to be for several days.
I totally agree. And Steve said to Terry, his coworker, oh, I'll write that check for you. And
I would be the exact same way though.
Exactly.
Just like, all I know right now is how to write this check. And
like you're
nothing
just trying,
else makes sense.
Your mind's just trying to like keep it together, I imagine.
Yeah.
And so the ambulance driver said, how can you even think of that right now? And it's like, okay, I'm with you.
We all grieve
like,
different.
Yeah. You never know how you would be.
None of us have experienced, unless you like have like a particularly gnarly history, but like nobody I know at least experiences shock enough to know how they would react in a time of shock. So,
yeah, I feel like unless you're in a position like this, you can't be like, well, why are you thinking of that? It's like, well, I don't know.
Yeah, there are some stories. There are some stories you've covered where, like, you know, what's the guy that killed his wife and daughters, and then went on this whole like press tour where he was acting like he didn't know what happened.
Jesus Christ! Yeah,
like there's times like that where it's weird that they're acting a certain way. I don't know, like it's a fine line.
It's a fine line. It's totally
for us to be critiquing other people.
Yeah, especially when they go on talk shows, because it's like,
yeah,
I don't even know how I'd act on a talk show as without any sort of traumatic incident, like let alone with. But again,
but there are some things that just feel like. I feel like even though I'm very lucky to have never been in a state of shock like that, I feel like I can still somehow on a human level relate to the complete panic and stunness.
Like almost disassociation, you know?
But then there's other moments where someone acts a little too odd or not odd enough. And I'm like, that doesn't sit right on a human level with me. It's very weird.
It is. And I feel like it's different for different people. And so it's like, you know, it's hard to gauge. So, yeah, I mean, interestingly, we'll get to it. But of course, and again, he's the husband. So, like, of course, you look directly at the husband first. You do. Mm-hmm. That's most likely who killed her. But, you know, in this case, it was not. So when his children showed up from school, he calmly explained to them that their mom was gone. Oh. And then his parents came and picked the kids up. Obviously, Steve was in shock, but police were quickly convinced he must have been the one to kill his wife. So they interviewed him several times and just were like, okay, it's not adding up that he did this. Eventually, the detective on the case was promoted and new detectives started investigating poor Steve. But luckily for Steve, the original detective was convinced of his innocence. He once said, "If this guy ever went to trial, I'd probably be called as his best witness. I did everything in the world to arrest him, but it's my obligation not to arrest the wrong man, and I believe in that."
Yeah.
So several days after Linda's tragic death, Bernice was found in the woods. Now, Bernice was the 17-year-old. Yeah. Mm-hmm. This was now 22 months after she disappeared, and it was only 3 miles from where they found Ellen's remains. Hmm. So a dentist identified her skeletal remains with dental records, just as he had done for Ellen. A medical examiner was able to determine from her bones that Bernice had also been stabbed to death. And now police finally started looking seriously into connections between Bernice and Ellen. Meanwhile, locals, of course, are reeling. The 2 women had been discovered, and Linda had been stabbed to death in less than a 2-week span. So one of them is murdered, and 2 of their bodies are found within 2 weeks.
Yeah, I don't know what to say to that. That's very odd.
Well, I just mean like that's the town went into like full panic because of the back-to-back incidents.
I know, but is there a I don't know, is there a reason why all of a sudden 2 are being found at the same time when it's been so long between the
I don't think so. I imagine it's just like maybe it's hunting season, or, you know, people are just out.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure, but I don't think it was anything intentional. I think it was just because their remains had been there since they were killed.
Got it. My first thought was that it was weird because like maybe someone who maybe knew something. I'm already in like trying to figure it out mode.
Right.
And I feel like if 2 bodies got found in the same time period, maybe someone was onto it, and I don't know. No, ignore me. I'm going in different directions.
No, you're good. I mean, it's possible. Listen, we don't know the fucking answers, so who knows? Because guess what? Only days later, 2 brothers who worked in logging found Eva's body in the woods. 4 victims, all discovered within weeks of each other, all like proximity-wise very close to each other. Now get this. This is, talk about bad luck, okay? These poor guys, these 2 guys who found Eva's body, had already found a body in this exact spot before.
Shut up. Oh my God. And a
5
body
years
unrelated?
earlier. Yeah.
Unrelated?
Well, not necessarily unrelated, probably related, but 5 years earlier, they'd found the remains of 37-year-old Mary Elizabeth Critchley, who had gone missing in August of 1981.
I can't imagine having, first of all, finding a body.
Yeah.
And then thinking, that's the worst thing that's ever happened. I hope that, like, there's no way on earth that could happen again. And then in the exact same spot where you're probably already triggered to go to work there, you find not just another body, but 2 bodies.
No, sorry. They found just another one. So this would be the second one.
I thought there was 2 for a second. Okay. Still, all of a sudden it happens again exactly where you are probably hoping you never have to go back.
Spot.
You know, on the ride there, they were like, oh yeah, this is the spot where we found a body last time. Fingers crossed, doesn't happen again. And then there was a body.
Yeah.
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 Oy.
So, oh God. So 5 years earlier, they had found the remains of 37-year-old Mary Elizabeth Critchley, who'd gone missing in August of 81. They had literally found Mary Elizabeth less than 500 yards away from where Eva was now found. It's sort of like you're hoping they're recovering from the trauma of the first one, and then it's like, JK, here you go. So pretty quickly it was like, well, this must be related. Like, this guy's using the same spots as his dumping grounds, so to speak. What happened to Mary Elizabeth, which they had not connected yet until this death. Mary Elizabeth had been hitchhiking home to Vermont from Massachusetts through the Connecticut River Valley when she went missing for several weeks before these brothers found her. Her cause of death could not be determined, but it was ruled a homicide. So now they're saying, well, shit. Like, they must be connected because it's the same spot. Like, what are the odds?
It's too weird.
It's too weird.
Unless, like, a whole gang of serial killers know, like,
or like West
get
Side
together.
Storying their turf. Like, no, this is my turf. Yeah. So police formed a task force and they said, you know what? We've already linked Linda, Bernice, Ellen, Eva, and Mary Elizabeth. Now we're going to throw another case into the mix because there was one more case that they had not considered, and that was even earlier, October of 1978.
Okay.
So 26-year-old Kathy Milliken went missing while she was photographing birds in the Chandler Brook Wetlands Preserve.
Wow, that sounds
of all
like the most innocent thing someone could be doing.
You could be doing. Not that it matters whether you're doing something innocent, but it just makes it all the more horrific to hear, you know?
It's like he took one look at her and went, I don't know, easy target, easy bait.
Yeah. So her body was recovered the day after she went missing, yards from where she was last seen, which means she was seen safe somewhere and literally yards away. So literally right there, she was killed. She had also been stabbed 29 times. She is considered the Connecticut River Valley Killer's first victim. So, but this was like they were backdating all of this, basically. Like they were connecting the dots much later, if that makes sense. But this task force that they had set up decided the deaths were unrelated.
What? How? What was the reason?
I don't know.
There's that TikTok sound of, what was the reason? But like, really, what was the reason?
The fucking reason? I don't know. And they were, of course, still othering Eva and saying like, well, she doesn't fit the profile.
Oh, shut the fuck up with this. Okay.
And they were out of leads and they just said, there's no serial killer. So it just didn't add up. And fortunately, one investigator told reporters that he felt they were all connected deep down, despite his official stance that there was no serial killer.
Because that man had read The Gift of Fear by Gavin DeBecker, and he had a hunch and he ran with it.
He's like, I trust my intuition.
Yeah.
And so he announced this to a reporter, and the public took it and ran with it. They were like, oh, this guy thinks there's a serial killer, even though the official stance is no. Well, yeah, there is, because we all know it. And finally, someone's validating that. So now they are sure the public is sure there is a serial killer in the valley. Months
Honestly,
later,
good for them to rally against the cops on that one.
I mean, imagine like the fear in the public eye and then like waiting to be lit by a spark. And it's like the spark is the one cop going, I think actually there is a serial killer, and everyone's like, we fucking knew it.
Yeah.
You know, we knew it.
Yeah.
We were waiting for someone to say it. We fucking knew it. And they did know it because months later, this man attacked again.
Great.
So there was a nurse named Barbara Agnew who lived in Norwich, Vermont. She was divorced with a son who lived back and forth between her house and his dad's across the river. She was taking classes at a local college for her bachelor's in nursing, and she traveled the country teaching other nurses how to use medical equipment. Already, there is a pattern here. Nursing. There were a lot of nurses that were victims. But that wasn't the only thing, because Barbara was also fiercely independent, adventurous. She was putting herself out there. She was single, but dating men through a matchmaking program, like living kind of that single, independent life that wasn't as common back then, especially like post-divorce. So in January of 1987, a huge snowstorm hit the area, and Barbara was out skiing with a European man she'd once met on a flight to visit her dad in Canada. She had spent the day with him, and at the end of their get-together, she assured him she was a Vermont girl who could safely drive home in the snow, so there was no need to worry about her.
Okay.
And he watched her head out into the storm, and that was the last time anyone ever saw her.
All right.
Unfortunately, drivers all over the interstate had to leave their cars behind that night to get to safety, so no one was too alarmed when a car was left alone with the driver's door open at a rest area. And when no one came to get it, it was towed away. So,
oh, shit. So,
yeah. A few days later, a rest stop attendant found Barbara's ski jacket and sweater in the dumpster. They were
not good.
Not good sign, especially because they were in perfect condition and had Barbara's hospital ID in one of the pockets.
Oh, wow. This person isn't even trying to hide it anymore.
No.
It feels almost like the cockiness is growing, the confidence.
It's just like fucking...
It's like, well, no one's found me yet.
Dismissive, yeah. So he and an office worker called the hospital several times trying to track Barbara down to come and get her clothes because they were like brand new.
Yeah.
And her ID. The hospital contacted Barbara's ex-husband, who called another contact, who finally called Barbara's best friend. This friend had already been worried about Barbara. She hadn't heard from her in 3 days. And now that she's hearing like nobody else has either, and her clothes were found in a dumpster, she knows something is desperately wrong. So she calls the police. Eventually, detectives are able to locate Barbara's towed car, and they find blood inside, on the floor, the steering wheel, and the driver's seat.
Oh my God. So she didn't even really make it out of the car.
No, which is horrible, especially because she was like in a snowstorm at a rest stop.
But she must have also it must have happened while she was nude, right? Because her clothes were in perfect act. They weren't like bloody or anything.
Well, it was her jacket and her... Like, I don't know if maybe he took it out of the car and threw it in the dumpster. Do you know what I mean?
I was like, that's a weird extra step. But it sounded like her clothes were all not bloody and the car was bloody. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question. Let me see what...
I mean, it's technically just a random detail. But
you're right, because it was her ski jacket, which I can understand she would have probably taken off
in the car, yeah.
But her sweater was also found in the dumpster. So I'm not 100% sure.
Maybe it was just like her outerwear.
Yeah.
Okay.
It could be. Or maybe just something extra she had in the back seat and he just didn't want it to be identified. I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So they find blood all over the car. The media puts out Barbara's face and story because she has not been found yet. Everyone in the area knew she was missing. And 2 months later, a woman out hiking with friends found Barbara's body face down in the snow. She said after hearing about Barbara in the news, she often wondered when they would find her. And when she saw a body in the snow, she knew instantly who it was.
Yeah.
Feels almost like she knew this was going to happen. Like she was like walking toward her own fate of finding this body. She was like, I just couldn't stop thinking about it.
You know, a lot of people have that experience where as they're walking towards that moment, there's like an aura about them.
Yeah.
Where they're
freaky.
like, that's a dead body. Like there's something like your spirits connect somewhere where like you're aware inside that something's going on.
You're like, I know I'm like heading toward this and I can't stop it.
Yeah.
So like the other women, Barbara had been stabbed to death. Of course, now the surrounding communities are in a full-on panic. Gun shops are selling out of weapons and mace. Women, of course, were terrified. And one man who was interviewed said, well, it doesn't really affect me.
Well, fucking
asshole.
ding, ding, ding. That makes sense to him.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not surprised that someone, I mean, let's just call it what it is. That is the most privileged thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, seriously. It's like, oh, okay, must be nice.
Yeah,
Thanks
it must
for
be
your
nice to
input.
not have to care since you know that
Yeah.
like you're a man and don't have to deal with it.
Yikes. So unfortunately, leads kept going cold, and it was clear now that Bernice, Ellen, Eva, Linda, and now Barbara must all be connected somehow, and maybe even Mary Elizabeth, who'd been killed in 81, and Kathy in 1978. Just
Right.
a whole slew of people. But everything was a dead end, and it seemed like none of the victims or their loved ones had any chance for closure. And of course, because he was not found, in 1988, the killer struck yet again. All right, just fucking buckle up, Em. Buckle
That's not it?
This is the fucking
Finale?
coup de grace finale. Here we go.
Okay.
August 6, 1988, hot night at the tail end of summer, 22-year-old Jane Borowski, who is 7 months pregnant, by the way, is heading home from a night at the fair when she pulls over to a closed convenience store to get a soda from the vending machine. It was there in the empty, dark parking lot that the Connecticut River Valley Killer attacked Jane. But she survived.
Did her baby?
I'll tell you. Yes, I'm just going to say yes.
Okay, thank God. Okay.
I know. I was going to wait till the end to say, but I don't want to leave anybody in a lurch. Yes.
Sure.
Also
Okay, thank God.
Yes, thank God. So I recently, this is interesting. I recently listened to Jane tell her own story on a podcast called Murder, She Told, which it tells like stories from like the New Hampshire and surrounding areas.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's a really well done podcast. And then I realized, wait a second, like 10 seconds in, I was like, I know this story because I'd also heard Jane tell this like a few weeks ago or months ago on the podcast. This is actually happening. The episode is called What If You Survived a Serial Killer? And so she also told her story there. And so either way, I have listened to her tell it twice, and she told it a third time on a show called what is it called? Dark Minds? Dark Minds. I watched that as well last night just to get one final viewing in.
Sure, yeah.
And so here is the story told in Jane's own words.
Oh, thank God. Wow, we never get that.
I know. It's really powerful. She says, I pulled in, went to the vending machine, got my soda, and I noticed this vehicle pull in and park right next to me on my passenger side of the car. I didn't think anything of it. I had no reason to think anything of it. As I was sitting in my car drinking my soda, getting ready to pull out, he walked around the back side of my car and asked me if the payphone worked and opened my car door and tried to get me out of my car.
Oh, no.
She said as soon as he grabbed her, she screamed so loud she broke the blood vessels in her eyes. Yeah.
I can't imagine the pain of that, but also good for you. Like scream
Just
as loud as you can.
Scream. She was in shock. It was happening so quickly. She started kicking at the attacker wildly, and she actually shattered her own windshield in the
Shut
process.
the fuck up. Oh my God. She's already
about, like,
the most
adrenaline.
powerful person I've ever heard of.
She said, the next thing I know, he takes a knife out and said calmly, maybe this will persuade you to get out of the car.
Oh my God, I can't imagine the fear. Oh my God.
And she said, which it did. I got out of the car. She asked what he wanted, and he accused her of beating up his girlfriend.
What?
She realized he must have her confused with someone else, so she told him he had the wrong girl. And he said, isn't this a Massachusetts car? He walked around and checked her plates, which were New Hampshire. He started walking back to his car, and Jane said something that she'll regret for the rest of her life.
Oh no.
She said, hey, asshole, what about my windshield?
Oh.
And
Okay.
he fucking turned around.
Wow.
He was leaving. And he turns around. Ugh. She said, well, she didn't feel that threatened anymore. She thought, well, he must have confused me with someone else. He's walking away. And she's like, what the fuck? You just harassed me, scared the shit out of me, attacked me, and broke my windshield.
No, I get why she did it. I'm like, what happens next? I'm very on edge right now.
It's not good. It's not good.
Oh, shit.
So she says, hey, asshole, what about my windshield? And he stops. And he turns around. He walks back, puts a knife to her throat. She sees a car driving down the road, so she makes a break for it. She runs, screaming toward the road, but the car keeps driving. It's like all these people picking up hitchhikers, and this car is like, nah, I gotta keep driving. Like, come on.
Yeah. Like, of course, yeah, we've just talked about, like...
the one time, yeah.
Oh.
Jane says, quote, the next thing I know, he tackled me down like a football player.
Oh, fuck.
I was on my back on the pavement, and he was on top of me, and before I could even realize what was happening, he was stabbing me. It was almost like an out-of-body experience. I could not believe this was happening to me. He stabbed Jane 27 times.
And she survived?
Mm-hmm. The entire time, she was trying to cover up her stomach to protect her baby.
Oh, God, I forgot she was pregnant.
Then suddenly, he stopped. He got up, eerily calm. She's still a lot, like, very much awake at this point. Walks to his car and starts driving away. Jane started to get up. She obviously knew she needed to get help, and he just watched her as he slowly drove past, just stared down at her.
Obviously she just got stabbed 27 times. I know had to be the worst thing in the world, but there's something particularly evil about a slow drive staring at her.
Just watching.
That's so... creepy isn't even the word. Eerie isn't even the word. Evil. It feels evil.
Sinister. Yeah, very evil. She said, quote, I rolled over on my hands and knees and started getting up. He just so slowly drove right by my head and looked right down at me, and I looked right up at him, and he drove away. He didn't speed off. He just drove away.
God, that is truly, I think, the most sinister thing I've ever heard.
I have goose cam, and like I've heard the story now so many times. Jane got in her car and went to get help. And here's the damage. Both of her lungs had been collapsed.
How is she alive?
I know. She struggled to even open her own car door because he had severed the tendons in one hand and one knee.
Oh my God.
He'd even cut her jugular and lacerated her liver, part of which she had to have removed. She did manage, though, to get into the car and start driving, but before she knew it,
don't say
things got even worse. Or not worse, but they just kept going because she suddenly realized she was driving behind him. He could see her in the rearview mirror.
Didn't even cross my mind.
No, of course not. So she pulls into a friend's driveway, jumps out to meet up with her friend, call for help. She and her friend heard the slamming of brakes and the squealing of tires from the car on the road when he noticed that she had stopped and pulled over.
Oh my God.
So they were just like waiting for him to get out and come after them. But suddenly the car just took off and peeled out. So
did she get his license plate or anything?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Just wondering.
No. So after he left, she realized how much she was bleeding and she started to lose consciousness. I imagine the adrenaline's wearing off at this point.
Sure.
She was convinced she would die just based on the amount of blood alone, but thank God she survived and so did her baby. She carried her daughter for 2 more months, so fully to term.
How on earth?
I know.
Also, like she had to get a C-section or something you can push with that many stitches in you and all that, right?
I don't know.
Oh my God, I can't even imagine labor during that. Okay.
No, I can't either. And when she was born, unfortunately, her daughter was very sick and had to fight for her life for 10 days in an incubator. And she was saying, it's how unfair it felt because she's like, the two of us already fought for our lives and now she's sick and like barely able to.
Also, I can't imagine, just like complete sidebar, the guilt of like maybe my stress from that night caused something. Which like that's not, I don't know that. I would worry about that the whole time.
But of course you'd be, you're like, well, we survived, but like, is the baby going to be okay? How do you know? I mean, so Jane actually didn't even know about this serial killer situation until she saw a report about her own attack in the newspaper, which said she was a possible victim linked to the murder of these other women. So she didn't even realize there was like this this whole chain of people who'd been killed. The police interviewed her, and Jane identified the attacker as a white man between 30 to 40 years old. He was average height, around 150 pounds, and he was blonde. He drove a dark-colored or brown 1970s to 80s Jeep Wagoneer with wood grain around the sides. They swabbed under her fingernails and all that, so they have DNA evidence. But as of her most recent interviews, it's been 34 years with no arrest and no closure.
Wow.
So on top of all that, imagine living every day knowing that whoever did this to you is still
Could
out
find
there.
you again. I mean, he knew your license plate, you know, like he at least knows you're in New Hampshire.
He knows
like
where your friend lives, you know.
Oh my God.
Especially because he's local, seemingly, since he killed everyone in the same area. So terrible.
Also, like I feel like there's some sort of connection of like, I feel like he stabbed everyone somewhere in the 20s amount of times. And like, I mean, it's interesting that I really would like to know the psychology of why he didn't feel the need for someone to die. He just wanted them to suffer.
You know, it's wild because everybody else died, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe he thought he was leaving her for dead. Like maybe the others, since they were out in the woods.
I would be panicking though if I could see she was still driving behind me. Like,
the driving. I know. And he did slam on the brakes, but maybe he thought the risk was too high to get out and attack her and her friend. You know, maybe they'd already called the police. Like, I don't know.
I'm sure she's thought about it a million times.
I'm sure.
Wow. And
I know.
I can't even imagine the fear of going through all that. Then your daughter having, some issues at first, and now and he's still out
answers. There. Yeah. Yep. No closure at all. So of the 7, I emphasize the 7 known victims because again, we added more later. You know, who knows if there are more that we haven't even heard about, found, connected. But so of the 7 known victims, Jane is the only person considered a survivor of the Connecticut River Valley Killer. And it is thought he may have many more, or at least some more victims that have not been connected or even been discovered. Now, we don't know who it is. There was a single popular suspect named Michael Nicolau. And in December 2005, Michael Nicolau murdered his second wife and her 22-year-old daughter in Florida.
Oh, my God.
And then took his own life later that day. Back in the 80s, though, Michael had 2 children in a previous marriage, and he lived with his family in Massachusetts. And in 1988, his then-wife, Michelle, took their children and hid from him in an unknown location because she was afraid of him. He was prone to violence. Michael found out where they were, and they have never been seen since.
Wow.
And their disappearance remains unsolved. Michelle's family hired a private investigator who started to believe that Michael could be the Connecticut River Valley Killer. So this PI reached out to Jane, the survivor, and convinced her Michael was her attacker too. But, plot twist, Jane has since changed her mind and does not believe Michael is her attacker.
Oh, okay.
So she said that she was actually never sure Michael fit the attack, but the private investigator spent 2 years convincing her it had to be him. So she finally just kind of went with it.
Gave in, yeah.
Yeah. And she said, quote, "I never really wanted to say to the media that I felt like it was him, but she told me if I didn't say that, nobody would take us seriously. And I did want people to take this seriously. I wanted the authorities to investigate him. She felt like they were doing nothing, though they actually were investigating him. I really want them to take me seriously. So I told her, okay, I'll say it was him." And then she said, "I wish I didn't." So she felt like that pointed the investigation in the wrong direction. And other people, offered differing perspectives. So Jane started really questioning this PI and the PI's work. And she said the PI got extremely defensive. So Jane just cut off all contact. Ultimately, Michael died by suicide using a gun, and he had also used a gun in Florida to kill his wife and daughter. And according to psychologists and investigators, it's extremely unlikely for a serial killer to swap out weapons like that.
Yeah,
it just doesn't really fit for him to do so many crimes with a knife that were clearly
successful crimes.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Like so many in succession, and then suddenly switch to a gun. And so Jane firmly no longer believes Michael is a culprit, but unfortunately that means the killer could still be in the area. And on Dark Minds, they did touch on 2 potential suspects, but they didn't reveal the name.
Okay.
And it took 20 years for Jane to be diagnosed with PTSD.
20? It should have taken 20 fucking minutes. Are you kidding me?
I know. I imagine, though, like, you know, it's probably hard. Like, she would have had to go seek help first, you know? And it's like, I imagine that's a hard step to take. Like, I don't think it was that it took 20 years for anybody to decide on it. I think it was just like it took her that time to actually go get a diagnosis.
Okay. For a second, I was like, that's like, the easiest diagnosis I've ever heard.
Who is gatekeeping PTSD from this person? I mean, Jesus. So the attack deeply affected her life, of course. Her story was featured in media like Unsolved Mysteries and that episode of Dark Minds. And she now speaks openly about what she experienced, her long road to healing, and how other survivors of violent crimes can heal too. I definitely recommend both the episode on Murder, She Told and the episode of This Is Actually Happening. And you can also watch Dark Minds to see her tell the story face to face. So New Hampshire and Vermont government sites still ask that anyone with any information on Jane's attack or the 7 victims to contact authorities because families are still waiting for closure and these women are waiting for justice. And I really, really hope this is one of those like Golden State where I'm like, can we please just nail this motherfucker?
Oh, yeah.
Let's get him.
I can't. I mean, shout out to Jane, by the way, for making sure that her story is told accurately.
Seems so badass to spend this long and then still have the guts and the fortitude to tell the story over and over and over again, you know?
I guess if it happened so long ago, eventually, and not that you can't be re-traumatized by things, but like maybe she's just like, I'd rather people know than not know. And
yeah, it's a very noble pursuit because I couldn't blame her if she was like, I don't want to revisit that part of my life, you know?
Yeah, I would expect. Yeah, that's what I usually would expect someone to say, or I would at least expect them to say, like, if I am going to talk about it, it's going to be like with. I'm not going to go into full detail because there's
like
something
with parameters or exactly.
Wow.
So yeah, that's the story, and I know we're Em and I are brushing close to a work call, so I'll leave it at that. But yeah, if you have any information, you know, obviously go check out the local, you know, PD of those towns and submit a tip.
Oh my gosh.
Let's get it. Let's nail them.
And shout out to Jane. Thank you for your story. And
Jane's a badass.
I just everyone take this as a lesson to, if you see something, say something, and trust your gut. Read The Gift of Fear by Gavin DeBecker, apparently, and do whatever you can to stay safe.
Don't
hitchhike. That time is over in everyone's lives, I think.
Yeah.
And with that, I guess we'll see you next week. Man,
I'll bring another humdinger.
I guess so. Humdinger is the perfect thing to call it, I guess. So, catch us for more humdingers next week, and we'll see you then. And
that's
why
we
drink.